Ho had never wanted to be here. He was a translator, not a diplomat. His job was to sit in a small room on the ship and help convert alien languages into something humans could understand. He was good at his work. He was quiet. He liked being invisible. But today, the head diplomat had fallen sick. Food poisoning from something he ate on the last planet. The backup translator had broken her leg during a training accident. And so, by some terrible twist of fate, Ho found himself standing in the back of the human delegation as they entered the throne room of the Empire. The throne room was massive. Ho had seen pictures, but pictures did not prepare him for the real thing. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Giant pillars of black stone held up the roof, each one carved with scenes of battle and conquest. Thousands of nobles stood on either side of the long red carpet that led to the throne. They were tall, very tall. The shortest ones were at least 7 feet, and many stood closer to 8 or 9. Their skin came in shades of deep purple and blue. Their eyes glowed with soft light, like stars trapped inside their skulls. They wore armor even to court, because they believed that a warrior should always be ready for battle. Ho felt very small. He was 5'7". He wore a simple gray suit because no one had thought to give him formal clothes. He carried a small translation device in his pocket, just in case. The human delegation walked slowly down the carpet. Ambassador led the group. She was a tall woman with silver hair and a calm face. She had been doing this work for 30 years. Behind her walked her assistants and guards, all dressed in their finest uniforms. Ho walked at the very back. He tried to make himself even smaller, which was hard because he was already quite small compared to everyone else in the room. At the end of the carpet sat the throne. It was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to drink in the light, and on the throne sat Queen. Ho had heard stories about her. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about her. She had conquered more than 1,000 star systems. She had defeated enemies that entire fleets could not stop. She was over 300 years old but aged slowly, and she looked no older than a human woman in her 30s. She was beautiful in a terrifying way. Her skin was the color of a deep ocean. Her hair was white like snow and fell past her shoulders. Her eyes burned with golden light, brighter than any other he had seen. She wore armor made of silver and black, decorated with the symbols of her countless victories. When she looked at the human delegation, Ho felt his heart stop for a moment. Her gaze was like a physical weight pressing down on him. Ambassador stopped at the proper distance from the throne and bowed deeply. The rest of the delegation bowed as well. Ho bowed too, grateful for the chance to look at the floor instead of at the Queen. "Rise," said Queen. Her voice was deep and smooth, like music played on an instrument made of thunder. Everyone stood up straight. Ambassador began her speech. She talked about friendship between species. She talked about trade agreements and peaceful cooperation. She talked about the hope that humans could work together for a better galaxy. Ho barely listened. He was too busy trying not to panic. He kept his eyes on the floor and counted his breaths. In and out, in and out. He just had to stand here and look professional for another hour, and then he could go back to the ship and never leave his small translation room again. He did not notice that Queen had stopped listening to Ambassador. He did not notice that her golden eyes had moved away from the Ambassador and were now focused on something at the back of the delegation. He did not notice that the entire court had gone silent. "You," said Queen. Ambassador stopped speaking. She looked confused. "Your Majesty." "Not you," said the Queen. She raised one hand and pointed directly at the back of the human group. "Him, the small one, come forward." Every single person in the room turned to look at Ho. His brain stopped working. For a long moment he just stood there, frozen like a small animal caught in the light of an oncoming vehicle. Then someone behind him gave him a small push, and his legs started moving on their own. He walked forward. Each step felt like it took a year, The nobles on either side of the carpet watched him pass. Some looked confused, some looked angry, some looked like they were trying not to laugh at the tiny human stumbling toward the throne. Ho stopped next to Ambassador. She looked at him with wide eyes, clearly just as confused as he was. He wanted to apologize to her, but he could not make his mouth work. "Closer," said Queen. Ho walked forward again until he stood at the base of the steps that led up to the throne. He was so close now that he could see the fine details of the Queen's armor. He could see the small scars on her hands from centuries of battle. He could see the way her golden eyes studied him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ho, Your Majesty," he managed to say. His voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Ho," she repeated as if tasting the words. "A human name, strange sounds." "I am just a translator, Your Majesty," Ho said quickly. "I am nobody important. I think there has been some mistake." The Queen smiled. It was a small smile, but it transformed her face. For just a moment she did not look like the terrifying conqueror of 1,000 worlds. She looked almost amused. "There is no mistake," she said. "I have waited for this moment for a very long time." She stood up from her throne. The movement was so sudden that several guards reached for their weapons, but the Queen ignored them. She walked down the steps until she stood directly in front of Ho. She was more than a foot taller than him. He had to crane his neck back to look at her face. This close, her presence was overwhelming. She smelled like flowers and metal and something else he could not name. Queen reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, almost hot, like she had fire running through her veins instead of blood. "I have met many beings in my long life," she said. Her voice was softer now, meant only for him. "Powerful warriors, clever politicians, wealthy merchants, but I have never met anyone like you." "I do not understand," Ho said honestly. "We have never met before." "No," she agreed, "but I knew you the moment I saw you. The same way I know when the sun is rising, the same way I know my own heartbeat." She turned to face the court, still holding his hand. Her voice rose until it filled the entire massive room. "Hear me, nobles of the Empire. Hear me, warriors and lords and ladies. I have chosen." The court went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. "This human, Ho, shall be my consort. He shall stand beside me as my equal. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the Queen has made her choice." For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the court exploded. Nobles shouted in anger and disbelief. Some threw their hands in the air. Others fell to their knees in shock. Ho heard words like impossible and outrage and madness flying through the air like weapons. A group of large males pushed their way to the front of the crowd. They wore even fancier armor than the others, decorated with jewels and gold. These were the noble suitors, Ho realized, the ones who had spent years trying to win the Queen's hand. "Your Majesty, this cannot be," shouted the largest one. He had dark purple skin and eyes that burned red with fury. "I am Lord of the Northern Stars. I have served you for 50 years. I have won 100 battles in your name, and you choose this creature over me." Other suitors added their voices to his complaint. They listed their achievements, their bloodlines, their wealth, and their power. They demanded explanations. They demanded justice. Queen listened to all of it with a calm expression. She did not let go of Ho's hand. When the shouting finally died down, she spoke again. Her voice was cold now, hard as the metal of her throne. "I am your queen," she said. "I do not explain my choices to anyone. But know this, all of you. The ancient laws are clear. Any who wish to challenge my decision may do so through the proper channels. The trials of worth remain open to those who believe they can prove themselves more deserving." She looked down at Ho, and her expression softened slightly. "Until such challenges are resolved, the chosen consort will reside in the royal quarters under my protection. Any who harm him will answer to me personally." She squeezed his hand gently. "Come," she said, "we have much to discuss." And before Ho could say anything, before he could protest or ask questions or simply run away like every instinct told him to, she led him up the steps and through a door behind the throne. The last thing he saw before the door closed was the face of Ambassador. She looked like someone had just hit her over the head with a large hammer. Ho knew exactly how she felt. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the noise of the angry court disappeared. They stood in a long hallway lit by soft blue lights. The walls were decorated with paintings of stars and galaxies. Queen finally let go of his hand. She turned to face him, and for the first time, Ho saw something in her eyes that he did not expect. Uncertainty. "I know you have questions," she said. "I know you are afraid. I know this makes no sense to you." "That is a very accurate description of my current state," Ho said. His voice was shaking slightly. The Queen almost smiled again. "You are honest, that is rare." "Your Majesty, with great respect, I think you have made a mistake. I am nobody. I am a translator. I sit in a small room and help computers understand languages. I am not worthy to be anyone's consort, especially not yours." "You are wrong," she said simply. "You are exactly who I have been looking for." "But why? What could you possibly see in me?" Queen was quiet for a long moment. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "When I look at you," she finally said, "I see something I have never seen before, a light, a warmth. It is like looking at a fire after being cold for 100 years." She reached out and touched his face gently. Her fingers were still warm. "I do not understand it myself," she admitted, "but I have learned to trust my instincts. They have kept me alive through wars and betrayals and challenges that would have destroyed anyone else. And my instincts tell me that you are special, Ho, that you are exactly what I need." Ho did not know what to say. This was not something his translator training had prepared him for. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "Now you rest," she said. "Tomorrow the challenges will begin. Many will try to prove that you are unworthy. You will have to face trials designed for warriors who have trained their entire lives." "I am going to die," Ho said flatly. "No," said Queen. "You are going to surprise everyone, including yourself." She turned and began walking down the hallway. After a moment, Ho followed her. What else could he do? Somewhere behind him, the most powerful nobles in the galaxy were planning his destruction. Somewhere ahead of him, deadly trials waited. And beside him walked the most powerful woman in the known universe, who had chosen him for reasons she could not explain. Ho thought about his small translation room on the ship. He thought about his quiet, boring life. He thought about how much he missed being invisible. But as he walked beside Queen through the halls of her palace, he felt something strange stirring in his chest. It was not quite courage. It was not quite hope. It was something smaller and quieter, like a tiny seed just starting to grow. Maybe, just maybe, there was a reason for all of this. Or maybe he was just going to die in a very interesting way. Either way, his life would never be the same again. The royal quarters were bigger than Ho's entire apartment building back on Earth. He had been given 3 rooms just for himself. One room was for sleeping, with a bed so large that he could fit his whole family on it. One room was for bathing, with a pool of warm water that changed colors based on his mood. And one room was for sitting and thinking, filled with soft chairs and windows that looked out over the capital city. The city stretched as far as he could see. Towers of black stone rose into the purple sky. Ships flew between the buildings like metal birds. Millions of lived their lives down there, and none of them had any idea that a small human translator was sitting in the Queen's palace, wondering how his life had gone so wrong. Ho sat by the window for a long time. Servants had brought him food and drink, but he had not touched any of it. He was not hungry. He was too busy being terrified. A soft chime sounded. Someone was at the door. "Come in," Ho said, expecting another servant. But it was not a servant, it was Ambassador. She walked into the room quickly, her face tight with worry. Behind her came two of her guards, but they stayed near the door. "Are you hurt?" she asked immediately. "Did they do anything to you?" "No, I am fine," Ho said, confused but fine. Ambassador let out a breath she had been holding. She sat down in a chair across from him and rubbed her eyes. "This is a disaster," she said. "I have been doing this job for 30 years, and I have never seen anything like this. The entire diplomatic mission is ruined. The noble houses are furious. Lord is demanding blood, and I have 6 different governments sending me angry messages asking what happened." "I am sorry," Ho said quietly. "I did not ask for any of this." "I know." Ambassador looked at him with tired eyes. "I know you did not. This is not your fault, but I need you to understand how serious this situation is. The Empire is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. If they decide that humans have insulted them, it could mean war." "War?" Ho felt his stomach drop. "Because of me. Because of this whole mess. The noble suitors feel humiliated. They have spent decades trying to win the Queen's favor, and she chose a human translator she had never met before. In their eyes, this is the greatest insult possible." She leaned forward. "I need to know everything. What did the Queen say to you? Why did she choose you? There must be some reason." Ho thought about the conversation in the hallway. He thought about the Queen's words, about the warmth she said she saw in him. "She said she saw something in me," he told the ambassador. "A light, a warmth. She said she has been looking for someone like me for a long time." Ambassador frowned. "That makes no sense. Do not choose mates based on feelings. They choose based on strength, wealth, and political power. This goes against everything we know about their culture." "Maybe there are things about their culture that we do not know," Ho suggested. "Maybe." The ambassador stood up and began packing. "Or maybe this is some kind of political move we do not understand. Maybe she is using you to send a message to the noble houses. Maybe she wants to weaken them by showing that she does not need their support." That seems like a lot of planning for someone she had never seen before today. "True." Ambassador stopped packing and looked at him. "Listen to me carefully. Tomorrow the challenges begin. According to law, anyone who wishes to claim the position of consort can challenge the current choice. You will have to face trials." "I know," the Queen told me. "These trials are designed for warriors. They are meant to test strength, speed, combat ability, and endurance. A human cannot win them. It is physically impossible." Ho nodded slowly. "So I am going to die?" "Not necessarily. There are other options. You could refuse the position. You could tell the Queen that you do not want to be her consort. If you do that, the matter ends. The suitors compete among themselves and you go back to being a translator." For a moment, Ho felt relief wash over him. He could end this nightmare with a simple refusal. He could go back to his quiet life, his small room, his boring work. But then he remembered the Queen's eyes. He remembered the uncertainty he had seen there, hidden beneath all that power and strength. He remembered how she had touched his face and spoken about a warmth she had been seeking for 100 years. "I cannot do that," he said quietly. Ambassador stared at him. "What do you mean you cannot do that? This is your life we are talking about." "I know, but—" Ho struggled to find the words. "The Queen chose me. I do not understand why, but she did. If I refuse her now in front of her entire court, it will humiliate her. It will make her look weak, and that might cause more problems than my death would." The ambassador's expression changed. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "You are thinking about the political consequences," she said slowly. "You are putting the mission ahead of yourself." "I am thinking about what is right," Ho corrected. "The Queen trusted me with something important. I cannot betray that trust just because I am afraid." For a long moment, Ambassador was silent. Then she reached out and put her hand on his shoulder. "You are a better person than most diplomats I have met," she said. "I hope that goodness is enough to keep you alive." She left shortly after, promising to do whatever she could to help him from the outside. Ho sat alone in his beautiful room and wondered if he had just made the worst decision of his life. Hours passed. Night fell over the capital city. The purple sky turned black, filled with stars that were different from the ones Ho had grown up watching on Earth. He felt very far from home. Another chime at the door. "Come in," Ho said, expecting Ambassador again. But it was not the ambassador. Queen walked into the room alone. She had changed out of her battle armor and wore simple robes of deep blue. Without the armor, she looked smaller. Still tall, still powerful, but more human somehow. "You did not eat," she observed, looking at the untouched food. "I was not hungry." She nodded and sat down across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, two strangers trying to understand what fate had pushed them together. "The nobles are angry," the queen finally said. "They believe I have lost my mind. Some of them are saying I have been enchanted by human magic." "Humans do not have magic." "I know, but they need an explanation. They cannot accept that I simply chose someone different from what they expected." Ho gathered his courage. "Your Majesty, may I ask you something?" "You may ask me anything." "Why me? I understand that you saw something in me, but I need more than that. I need to understand why you would risk so much for someone like me." Queen was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the city below. "I have ruled for 200 years, she said at last. "In that time I have conquered empires. I have crushed rebellions. I have made treaties and broken them. I have done everything a queen is supposed to do." She turned back to face him. "But I have also been alone, surrounded by people but alone. Everyone wants something from me: power, wealth, favor. They look at me and see the throne. They do not see the person sitting on it. And you think I am different. I know you are different. When I looked at you in that throne room, I saw something I have not seen in centuries. Someone who did not want anything from me. Someone who was terrified, yes, but not of my power. You were afraid because you did not understand what was happening, but you were not afraid of me." Ho considered this. "I am a little afraid of you," he admitted. The queen laughed. It was a soft sound, nothing like the powerful voice she used in court. "Good, a little fear is healthy, but you are not trying to use me. You are not calculating how to benefit from this situation. When your ambassador came to see you, you could have agreed to refuse me. It would have been the safe choice, but you did not. You know about that." "I know about everything that happens in my palace." She smiled slightly. "I heard what you said. You stayed because you did not want to humiliate me. You thought about my feelings before your own safety. It was the right thing to do." "Yes, and that is exactly why I chose you." She leaned forward, her golden eyes intense. "The empire is built on strength. We respect power and conquest, but we have forgotten something important. We have forgotten kindness. We have forgotten thinking about others. And you believe I can remind you." "I believe you already have." She stood up and walked to the window. "My nobles think humans are weak because you are small and short-lived. They do not understand that true strength is not about muscles or weapons. It is about the choices we make when no one is watching." Ho joined her by the window. Standing next to her, he felt the difference in their sizes more than ever. She could break him with one hand, but somehow that did not scare him as much as it should have. "The trials tomorrow," he said. "Ambassador told me they are impossible for a human to pass." "They are designed for warriors," the queen agreed. "But there are no rules about how to complete them, only that they must be completed." "What do you mean?" She turned to face him. "The trials test strength, but they do not define what strength means. A warrior would try to overpower his opponents, but there are other ways to win." Like what? That is something you will have to discover for yourself. She reached out and touched his face again, just as she had done in the hallway. I cannot help you during the trials. The law forbids it, but I can tell you this: trust yourself. Trust the qualities that made me choose you. They are more powerful than any weapon. What if I fail? Then you die and my enemies will have won. Her voice was matter of fact, but her eyes were sad. I do not want that to happen, but I cannot protect you from everything. This is a test for both of us. What is your test? My test is having faith. Faith that I made the right choice. Faith that the universe brought you to me for a reason. She dropped her hand. It has been a long time since I had faith in anything. They stood together in silence, looking out at the alien city. Somewhere out there, powerful nobles were planning Ho's destruction. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was watching and waiting to see what would happen. But in that moment, none of it seemed to matter. For the first time since this madness began, Ho felt something like peace. I will try my best, he said finally. I cannot promise to win. I do not even know if I can survive, but I will try. Queen nodded. That is all I ask. She left him alone then, disappearing into the dark hallways of the palace. Ho stayed by the window for a long time, watching the stars. Tomorrow would bring pain and danger and probably death, but tonight he allowed himself a small moment of hope. The most powerful woman in the galaxy believed in him. Maybe that was worth something. Maybe that was worth everything. He went to bed and dreamed of fire and ice, of battles and kindness, of a queen who was searching for something she could not name and a translator who might just be the answer to her question. When dawn came, he was ready to face whatever the universe threw at him, or at least as ready as anyone could be for certain doom. The Arena of Worth was an ancient place. It had been built 1,000 years ago, carved from a single mountain of black rock. The seats could hold 100,000, and today every seat was filled. Word of the human consort had spread across the empire, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Ho stood in a small room beneath the arena, waiting to be called. He wore simple clothes that the servants had given him, nothing fancy, just comfortable fabric that would let him move. He had no weapons. He had no armor. He had nothing but his mind and whatever courage he could find. The door opened. A guard looked at him with something like pity. "It is time," the guard said. Ho took a deep breath and walked out. The roar of the crowd hit him like a wave. 100,000 voices shouting and chanting, most of them calling for his blood. He walked across the sandy floor of the arena, feeling very small under the open sky. At one end of the arena sat Queen on a raised platform. She wore her battle armor again, shining silver and black. Her face showed no emotion, but Ho thought he saw something in her eyes. Worry, maybe, or hope. At the other end of the arena stood his challengers. There were 5 of them, each one a noble lord who wanted to prove himself worthy of the Queen's hand. Lord stood at their center, his red eyes burning with hatred. An elder walked to the middle of the arena. He was old, his purple skin faded to gray, but his voice was strong. "The trials of worth begin," he announced. "The chosen consort must prove himself against the challengers. 3 trials shall be held. The consort must survive all 3 to keep his position. If he fails any trial, he dies." The crowd cheered. Ho's heart pounded in his chest. "The first trial is the trial of strength," the elder continued. "The consort must move the stone of ancestors from one end of the arena to the other." 2 servants rolled out an enormous boulder. It was taller than Ho and probably weighed more than a small spaceship. Even a strong human could not move it an inch. Even a would struggle. Lord laughed. "This will be over quickly." Ho walked toward the stone. He looked at it from all sides, studying its shape and position. The crowd grew quiet, waiting to see what he would do. He could not move this stone. That was obvious. His muscles were not designed for such work. but the queen had said there were no rules about how to complete the trials, only that they must be completed. Ho looked around the arena. He looked at the sandy ground. He looked at the slope of the floor, which tilted slightly downward toward the far end. And slowly, an idea formed in his mind. He walked to a nearby pile of tools that workers had left after preparing the arena. No one stopped him. There were no rules against using tools. He found a long metal rod, a bucket, and some rope. He brought them back to the stone and began to work. First, he dug a small hole under the edge of the stone. Then he wedged the metal rod under the stone and used it as a lever to lift one side just a tiny bit. While the stone was lifted, he pushed the bucket underneath, creating a small wheel of sorts. The crowd murmured. They had never seen anything like this. Ho repeated this process several times, placing more objects under the stone until it sat on a collection of round containers that could roll. Then he tied the rope around the stone and began to pull. The stone moved. It moved slowly, rolling on the buckets and containers beneath it, but it moved. Ho pulled with all his strength, his small body straining against the weight. But inch by inch, the stone rolled across the arena floor. The crowd went silent. Even Lord stopped laughing. It took Ho nearly an hour to move the stone to the other end of the arena. By the time he finished, his hands were bleeding and his muscles screamed in pain. But he had done it. The elder looked shocked, but he had no choice but to announce the result. The first trial is complete. The consort has proven his strength. Half the crowd booed. The other half sat in stunned silence. Up on her platform, Queen allowed herself a small smile. Lord stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. This proves nothing. He used tricks. This is not real strength. There are no rules about methods, the elder said calmly. The trial was to move the stone. He moved the stone. The first trial is complete. The second trial was announced. The trial of combat. The consort must face a challenger in single battle. The fight continues until one participant cannot continue. Lord smiled. I will fight him myself. Ho's blood turned to ice. Lord was one of the greatest warriors in the Empire. He had won hundreds of battles. He could kill Ho with one finger. But there was no choice. Ho stepped forward to face his opponent. Lord did not even draw a weapon. He did not need one. He approached Ho slowly, enjoying the fear on the human's face. I am going to break every bone in your body, said quietly. I am going to make you scream until your voice gives out, and then I am going to present your broken body to the queen as a gift. Ho's mind raced. He could not win this fight. He could not even survive one hit from this monster, but maybe he did not need to fight at all. Wait, Ho said, holding up his hands. Before we begin, may I ask you something? Paused, surprised. What? Why do you want to be the queen's consort? The question caught the off guard. What kind of stupid question is that? For power, of course. For glory. To stand beside the greatest ruler in the galaxy. But do you love her? The crowd went quiet, stared at Ho like he had grown a second head. Love? What does love have to do with anything? Everything, Ho said. You talk about power and glory, but what about her? What about what she needs? She has been alone for 200 years, surrounded by people who only want things from her. She is tired of being used. She wants someone who cares about her as a person, not as a source of power. His eyes narrowed. You know nothing about her. I know that she chose me, Ho said. A weak, small, powerless human. She could have had any warrior in the galaxy, but she chose me. Do you not wonder why? Some members of the crowd were nodding. They had never thought about it this way. She chose you because she is mad, growled. Nothing more. Or maybe she chose me because I am the first person in 200 years who looked at her and saw a lonely woman instead of a powerful queen. Ho stepped closer to the giant. You want to fight me? Fine, kill me. But it will not make her love you. It will not fill the emptiness in her heart. You can defeat me with your fists, but you will never be what she actually needs." Raised his fist to strike, but something in Ho's eyes made him hesitate. "You are not even going to defend yourself?" asked. "Would it make a difference? You are 10 times my size. You could kill me before I even moved. But I am not afraid of you, Lord, because I know something you do not." "What is that?" "That violence is not strength. True strength is understanding what matters. True strength is caring about others more than yourself. The Queen sees that. That is why she chose me over you." His fist shook, his red eyes burned with fury, but he did not strike. Slowly, incredibly, he lowered his hand. "I withdraw from the challenge," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because I fear this human, but because I finally understand. I am not what she needs. I have spent 50 years fighting for her attention, and I never once asked what she actually wanted." The crowd erupted in shock. The elder looked like he might faint. "The challenger has withdrawn," the elder announced. "The second trial is complete." Lord turned and walked away. He did not look back. The remaining 4 challengers looked at each other nervously. What they had just witnessed had shaken them badly. The third trial was announced. The trial of wisdom. The consort must answer a question posed by the Council of Elders. If his answer is judged unworthy, he fails. An old woman stepped forward. She was even older than the first elder, her skin nearly white with age, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Human," she said, "here is your question. The Empire is built on conquest and strength. We have dominated the galaxy for 1,000 years. What can a species as weak as humanity possibly offer us?" It was a trap. If Ho criticized he would insult them. If he praised humanity too much, he would seem arrogant. There was no safe answer. But Ho thought about everything that had happened. He thought about the Queen's loneliness. He thought about Lord's withdrawal. He thought about his own strange journey from translator to consort. "Humanity offers something that cannot be taken by force," he said. "We offer a different way of seeing the universe. The Empire is strong, yes. You have conquered many worlds, but in all your conquests have you ever asked yourselves what you are fighting for? Not power, not glory, but real meaning." He turned to face the crowd. "Humans are weak. We live short lives. We cannot match your warriors in battle or your ships in space. But we have learned something that strength alone cannot teach. We have learned to find meaning in small things, in love, in kindness, in caring for each other." He pointed at the Queen. "Your Queen has ruled for 200 years and she is tired. Not tired of power, but tired of being alone. She does not need another warrior. She needs someone who can see her as a person, someone who can remind her why life is worth living." He turned back to the elder. "That is what humanity offers. Not strength, but heart. Not conquest, but connection. And maybe, just maybe, that is exactly what this empire needs." The arena was completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. The old woman studied Ho for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "The answer is worthy," she announced. "The third trial is complete." The crowd did not know how to react. Some cheered. Some sat in shocked silence. Some looked up at their queen with new eyes, seeing her for the first time as something other than a distant symbol of power. Queen stood up from her platform. Her voice rang across the arena. "The trials are finished. The consort has proven himself. Let no one question my choice again." Ho's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the sand, exhausted beyond words. He had done it. Somehow, impossibly, he had survived. Guards came to help him up. They carried him out of the arena as the crowd finally began to cheer. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to know that something had changed. Ho closed his eyes and let himself be carried away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems, new dangers. But for now, he had won. And that was enough. 3 weeks had passed since the trials. Ho was still alive, which surprised him every morning when he woke up. He had expected the challenges to continue, the assassination attempts to begin immediately. But instead, there was peace. Queen had moved him to quarters even closer to her own. They spent time together every day, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. She told him about her long life, her victories and regrets. He told her about Earth, about the simple pleasures of human life, about the family he had left behind to work in space. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. He learned to read her moods, to know when she needed space and when she needed company. They were becoming friends and maybe something more. But Ho was not foolish enough to think the danger had passed. He noticed things, small things that most people would miss. Servants who looked at him a moment too long, guards who whispered when he walked by, messages that stopped suddenly when he entered a room. Someone was plotting against him. He was sure of it. One night Ho could not sleep. He got up from his bed and walked through the palace halls, enjoying the quiet. The guards nodded at him as he passed. They had grown used to his night walks. He found himself near the kitchens, drawn by the smell of something sweet baking. The palace cooks worked at all hours, preparing food for the thousands who lived in the royal compound. As he approached the kitchen door, he heard voices, low voices speaking quickly. He stopped and listened. "The poison arrives tomorrow," someone was saying. "Untraceable, made from plants on a moon 3 systems away. Not even the royal doctors will know what killed him." "How do we get it into his food?" asked another voice. "I have someone in the kitchen. She will put it in his morning drink. He will be dead before noon." Ho's blood turned cold. He pressed himself against the wall, barely breathing. "What about the queen?" the first voice asked. "What about her? Once the human is dead, she will have to choose a proper consort. Lord has already offered us positions in his court if we help him win her hand." Lord Ho recognized the name. He was one of the 4 challengers who had not withdrawn during the trials. A quiet, dangerous man with cold blue eyes and a reputation for getting what he wanted through any means necessary. "Are we sure this will work? The queen seems attached to this human." Attachment fades, especially when the object of attachment is dead. She will grieve, she will recover, and she will choose again. This time she will choose wisely. The voices moved away, going deeper into the kitchen. Ho stayed frozen against the wall for a long time, trying to think. He knew what he should do. He should go straight to the queen and tell her everything. She would have the conspirators arrested. She would have them executed. Justice would be served. But something stopped him. He thought about Lord, the warrior who had withdrawn from the trials, had spent 50 years trying to win the queen's favor through force and determination. When Ho had shown him a different way, he had chosen to step back. He had changed. Maybe these conspirators could change too. Ho made a decision. It was probably stupid. It might get him killed, but it felt right. The next morning he went to the kitchens early. He found the woman the conspirators had mentioned, a young cook named. She looked terrified when she saw him, her purple hands shaking as she prepared breakfast. "You know who I am," Ho said quietly. She nodded, unable to speak. "And you know what you were planning to do today." Her eyes went wide with fear. She looked around for an escape, but there was none. "Please," she whispered, "please do not tell the queen. I have family. They will be punished too if I am caught." "Why are you doing this?" Ho asked. "Did Lord threaten you?" Hesitated, then nodded. "He said he would destroy my family if I did not help. My parents, my sisters, everyone. He is a powerful lord. He can do it easily." "So you are not doing this because you hate me?" "I do not even know you." Tears started falling down her face. "I just want my family to be safe." Ho felt something shift in his chest. This woman was not evil. She was scared and desperate, caught between impossible choices. "What if I could protect your family?" he asked. She stared at him. "What?" "The queen cares about me. She would help if I asked. I could have your family moved somewhere safe, somewhere Lord cannot reach them. Why would you do that? I was going to kill you. Because you did not want to, because you were forced into this, because I believe people deserve second chances. He reached out and gently took her trembling hand. Help me. Tell me everything about Lord's plan. Help me stop him without violence, and I promise I will protect you and your family. Cried harder, but she nodded, and she told him everything. That afternoon, Ho requested a meeting with Lord. The noble was surprised but agreed, probably thinking it was a perfect opportunity to study his victim before the assassination. They met in a small garden within the palace. Beautiful flowers grew everywhere, filling the air with sweet scents. Guards stood at a distance, watching but not listening. Lord was tall even for a, with skin the color of midnight and eyes like chips of ice. He smiled when he saw Ho, but there was no warmth in it. The human consort said smoothly, "To what do I owe this honor?" "I know what you are planning," Ho said simply. The smile froze on his face. "I do not know what you mean." "The poison, the cook, the plan to kill me and claim the queen for yourself." Ho kept his voice calm even though his heart was racing. "I know everything." For a long moment neither of them spoke, then laughed, but it was a cold, dangerous sound. "If you knew all that, you would be foolish to meet me alone in a garden," he said. "I could kill you right now and be done with it." "You could," Ho agreed. "But then the queen would know it was you. I left a message explaining everything. If I do not return, she will read it." His eyes narrowed. "You are bluffing." "Maybe, but can you take that risk?" The noble studied him carefully. "What do you want? Money? Power? Whatever it is, I can give it to you. We can make an arrangement." "I do not want anything from you except one thing." "Name it." "I want you to stop." Ho stepped closer to the dangerous lord. "Not because I am threatening you, not because you are afraid of being caught. I want you to stop because you realize it is wrong." Stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "Wrong. There is no right or wrong in politics. There is only power." "Is that really what you believe? That nothing matters except winning?" Ho shook his head. "You have spent your whole life fighting for the queen's attention, but have you ever asked yourself why? What would you do if you won? Would you love her? Would you care for her? Or would she just be another prize on your shelf?" "I would be the consort of the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. That is enough." "But it is not enough for her." Ho's voice softened. "She is not looking for power. She has more power than anyone in history. She is looking for something real, something true. And you cannot give her that, Lord, not because you are weak, but because you have forgotten how." Was quiet for a long moment. His cold expression flickered, showing something beneath. Pain, maybe, or loneliness. "You know nothing about me," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "I know that you are afraid," Ho said gently. "Afraid that you are not enough on your own. Afraid that without power and schemes you are nobody. But that is not true. Everyone has value. Everyone deserves a chance to be better." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small container. It was the poison that had given him instead of putting it in his drink. "I am giving this back to you," Ho said, "and I am not going to tell the queen about your plot. This is your chance, your second chance. You can choose to keep scheming and fighting, or you can choose to find another path." Looked at the poison, then at Ho. His face was unreadable. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why would you forgive me? I was going to kill you." "Because forgiveness is stronger than revenge. Because kindness is more powerful than violence. Because if I respond to your hatred with more hatred, nothing ever changes." Ho placed the poison in his hand. "I am choosing to believe you can be better. What you do next is up to you." He turned and walked away, leaving the noble standing alone in the garden. Ho did not know if his gamble would work. Might try again. He might come up with a new plan, a more careful scheme. The danger might never end. But when Ho reached the palace doors and looked back, he saw Lord staring at the poison container in his hand. And then, slowly, the noble crushed it. The liquid spilled onto the ground, absorbed by the flowers. Looked up and met Ho's eyes across the garden. He did not smile. He did not wave. But he nodded just once before turning and walking away. That night the queen found Ho sitting by his window, looking at the stars. "You seem thoughtful," she said, sitting beside him. "I made a decision today," he told her. "I hope it was the right one." "Tell me about it." So he did. He told her everything about the conspiracy, about his conversation with Lord. He told her about the forgiveness he had offered and the choice he had given his enemy. When he finished, the queen was quiet for a long time. "You are either the bravest person I have ever met," she said finally, "or the most foolish." "Probably both." She laughed softly and took his hand. Most rulers would have had executed. It would have been the safe choice, the smart choice. "But not the right choice," Ho said. "Killing him would have ended the immediate threat, but it would not have changed anything. The noble houses would still hate me. The scheming would continue. By offering forgiveness, maybe I planted a seed. Maybe we'll change. Maybe others will hear the story and think differently. Or maybe he will try to kill you again next week." "Maybe," Ho shrugged. "But I would rather take that risk than become the kind of person who responds to violence with more violence." The queen squeezed his hand. "You know what you have done today? You have shaken the foundations of the empire. The story is already spreading. A human who forgave his would-be assassin. It is unheard of." "Is that good or bad?" "I do not know yet, but it is definitely interesting." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You continue to surprise me, Ho." "I continue to surprise myself." They sat together in the starlight, two people from different worlds who had somehow found each other. The future was uncertain, full of dangers and challenges, but for this moment they were at peace. And sometimes Ho thought that was enough. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human had not only survived the trials of Worth, but had forgiven a noble who tried to assassinate him. Lord had publicly renounced his claim to the queen's hand and pledged his loyalty to the new order. Other nobles were talking, questioning, wondering if perhaps they had been wrong about humans all along. 3 months had passed since that day in the garden. Ho had settled into his new life, strange as it was. He spent his mornings learning history and culture. He spent his afternoons with the queen, helping her with diplomatic matters where his translator skills proved surprisingly useful. He spent his evenings walking through the palace gardens, often joined by who wanted to talk, to ask questions, to understand this strange creature who had captured their queen's heart. But today was different. Today was the day that would change everything. Ho stood in a preparation room, wearing clothes more elaborate than anything he had ever worn before. The robes were deep blue and silver, made from fabric that seemed to flow like water. Servants had spent hours preparing him, fixing his hair, adjusting every fold and crease. Ambassador sat in a chair nearby, watching with an expression of disbelief. "I still cannot believe this is happening," she said for perhaps the 100th time. "Neither can I," Ho admitted. A human, crowned as the equal ruler of the empire. 6 months ago, we came here hopping for a simple trade agreement. Now you are about to become the most powerful human in history. The queen is the most powerful person in history. I am just her partner. That is not how it works, and you know it. Equal ruler means equal power. You will have authority over billions of. You will help make decisions that affect the entire galaxy. Ho felt his stomach twist. When you put it that way, I feel like running away. You could, you know. Ambassador's voice was serious. Even now you could refuse. No one would blame you. He thought about it. He really did. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on him like a physical force. He was just a translator from a small town in Korea. He liked quiet rooms and boring work and being invisible. He was not meant for crowns and power and ruling empires. But then he thought about her laugh when he told silly jokes. He thought about her eyes when she talked about her dreams for the future. He thought about the way she held his hand when she was worried, seeking comfort in his presence. "I am not running," he said firmly. "Whatever happens, I am not running." The ambassador nodded slowly. "Good. The human delegation is proud of you, Ho. All of Earth is proud of you." A knock at the door. A servant entered and bowed deeply. "It is time, my lord." Ho took a deep breath. "Let us go." The throne room was even more crowded than it had been on that first day when his life changed forever. Representatives from 100 different species filled the galleries. Ambassadors, kings, presidents, and leaders from across the galaxy had come to witness this moment. The nobles stood in their usual places along the carpet, but something had changed in them. Some still looked hostile, but many looked curious, almost hopeful. The story of the human who forgave his enemies had touched something deep in their warrior culture. And there, at the end of the carpet, stood Queen. She wore ceremonial armor of pure white, decorated with gems that sparkled like stars. A crown of silver and crystal sat upon her white hair. She looked like something from a dream, powerful and beautiful, and somehow otherworldly. When her eyes met Ho's, she smiled. It was a small smile meant only for him. He walked forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. The crowd watched in complete silence. The weight of history pressed down on him. When he reached the base of the throne, he stopped. This was the moment. Everything had led to this. Queen raised her hands, and her voice rang out across the throne room. "People of the Empire, representatives of the galaxy, we gather here today for a ceremony that has not been performed in 1,000 years. Today, I take an equal, not a consort who stands behind me, but a partner who stands beside me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. An equal ruler was almost unheard of in history. "Many of you doubted my choice," the Queen continued. "You looked at this human and saw weakness. You saw a small, fragile creature who could not possibly belong in our world of warriors and conquerors." She looked at Ho with warmth in her golden eyes. "But I saw something different. I saw strength that does not need muscles. I saw courage that does not need weapons. I saw a heart big enough to forgive his enemies and wisdom deep enough to understand what truly matters." She descended the steps until she stood face to face with him. "Ho of Earth, in the past months, you have taught this empire something it had forgotten. You have shown us that kindness is not weakness. You have shown us that mercy is not surrender. You have reminded us that the purpose of power is not to conquer, but to protect." She reached out and took his hands. "The empire was built on strength, but strength without compassion is just brutality. I have been alive for 300 years, and I have conquered more worlds than I can count. But I never found peace until I found you." Tears were forming in Ho's eyes. He blinked them back. "I love you," said simply. "Not because you are powerful, but because you are kind. Not because you are strong, but because you are good. And I believe that with you beside me, I can finally become the ruler this empire deserves." She gestured to a servant who brought forward a crown. It was smaller than hers, but made of the same silver and crystal. It gleamed in the light of 1,000 chandeliers. "Kneel," she commanded softly. Ho knelt before her. His heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. "By the authority given to me by the ancient laws of the Empire, I name you Ho, equal ruler and partner to the throne. May your wisdom guide us, may your compassion soften us, and may your love remind us why we fight." She placed the crown upon his head. It was surprisingly light. "Rise," she said, "rise and take your place beside me." Ho stood. The crown settled onto his head like it belonged there. Together they turned to face the crowd. Queen raised their joined hands. "People of the Empire, I present to you your new ruler. Treat him with the respect you would show me, for his word is my word, and his will is my will." For a moment nothing happened. The throne room was silent. Then Lord stepped forward. The great warrior who had once wanted to crush Ho with his bare hands knelt on one knee and bowed his head. "Long live the Queen and King," he said loudly. Lord stepped forward and knelt as well. "Long live the Queen and King." One by one, the nobles began to kneel, then the soldiers, then the servants, then the ambassadors and representatives from across the galaxy. The chant spread through the room like a wave. "Long live the Queen and King! Long live the Queen and King!" Ho stood there, holding his hand, watching as the most powerful beings in the galaxy knelt before him. It was too much to process. His mind felt like it was floating somewhere above his body, looking down at a scene that could not possibly be real. But squeezed his hand, and the warmth of her touch brought him back to Earth. "You are doing wonderfully," she whispered. "I feel like I am going to pass out," he whispered back. "Please do not. It would ruin the ceremony." Despite everything, he laughed. She laughed too, and suddenly the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. The ceremony continued for hours. There were rituals and speeches and blessings from holy leaders of a dozen different faiths. Ho's face hurt from smiling. His feet hurt from standing. But through it all was there beside him a constant presence that made everything bearable. Finally, as the last of the ceremonies concluded, the royal couple retired to a private balcony overlooking the capital city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "We did it," Ho said, still not quite believing it. "We did," removed her crown and set it aside, then helped him remove his. "How do you feel?" Terrified, overwhelmed, completely unprepared for any of this. He paused, but also happy, happier than I have ever been. She pulled him into an embrace. Despite the difference in their sizes, it felt perfect. "I meant what I said in there," she murmured against his hair. "I love you. I did not think I was capable of it anymore, but you proved me wrong." "I love you too." The words came easily, naturally, as if he had been waiting his whole life to say them. "I do not know how we got here. I do not know what the future holds, but I know that wherever we go, I want to go there with you." They stood together as the sun set over the Empire. Below them, a city of millions was celebrating. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear, the countless worlds that now looked to them for guidance. Somewhere in that vast galaxy, Ho's family was watching the broadcast of the coronation, probably crying and cheering and wondering how their quiet, ordinary son had become a king. Somewhere in that galaxy, Ambassador was already drafting new treaties and agreements, taking advantage of humanity's new position. Somewhere in that galaxy, other humans were looking up at the stars with new hope, knowing that one of their own had done the impossible. But Ho did not think about any of that. He just held the woman he loved and watched the stars come out. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rule," said. "We make this empire better. We teach them what you taught me. We show them that there is another way." "That sounds like a lot of work." "It will be," she smiled at him, "but we will do it together." Together, the word had never sounded so beautiful. Ho, translator from Earth, took a deep breath of the alien air and prepared to begin his new life. He was still scared. He still felt completely unprepared, but he was not alone anymore. And that, he decided, made all the difference. The stars shone down on the new king and queen of the empire. The galaxy waited to see what would happen next, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, the universe smiled at a love story that no one had seen coming. It was, Ho thought, a pretty good ending. Or rather, a pretty good beginning.